No one kills out of hatred. They kill out of fear of losing space, fear of being replaced, fear of no longer being necessary, fear of discovering that without the office, without the title, without the power, maybe nothing remains. That fear rarely shows itself as it truly is. It disguises itself as diligence, responsibility, concern for the greater good. It presents itself as prudence, as strategic caution, as political maturity. But deep down, it is always the same primitive terror, disappearing. Because power does not build identity, it only hides it. And when power threatens to leave, the void appears. The absence of power does not create the void, it only reveals it. The void was already there, ignored, anesthetized by titles, offices, and authority. When that disappears, the individual is finally forced to face who they are without applause. Whenever two people say they will rule together, one of them is already lying, sometimes both, not out of cruelty, but because power does not accept competition. It accepts submission, it accepts silence, it accepts obedience, or it eliminates the obstacle. The discourse of shared rule often sounds noble. It appeals to reason, civility, the idea of collective maturity. But real power is not an abstract concept. It is lived, disputed, felt in the body. In practice, it is an emotional minefield. Every gesture is interpreted, every silence is suspicious, every smile can be a veiled threat. Nothing is neutral when control is at stake, and when the enemy sleeps in the same room, sits at the same table, calls you brother, betrayal is not a distant possibility. It is not a maybe, it is not a hypothesis, it is only a matter of time. Coexistence does not soften conflict, it intensifies it. It turns tension into routine, and routine makes rupture inevitable. Because proximity does not neutralize conflict, it only makes it more dangerous. The closer it is, the greater the impact. The more intimate the relationship, the more devastating the break. Betrayals from close quarters always hurt more and are always more lethal, symbolically or literally. This is not about ancient Rome, or at least not only about it. It sounds dangerously current, uncomfortably familiar. Swap palaces for boardrooms, swap togas for suits, swap senators for councils, followers, voters, or digital audiences. The dynamic is the same. This is not about cartoon heroes or villains, not about historical monsters that are easy to condemn. It is about two people who inherited the greatest empire of their time and proved that blood does not prevent ambition. Sometimes it only delays it. Family ties create the illusion of moral limits. But when power enters the scene, even kinship becomes a detail. Caracalla and Geta, two brothers, one empire. A promise that should never have been made. A promise that seemed reasonable to those watching from the outside, but completely unsustainable for those living inside the machine. Sons of Emperor Septimius Severus, they did not seize power by force. They did not lead a coup. They did not overthrow a tyrant. They were given the empire, and receiving power is often more dangerous than conquering it. Those who conquer know the cost. Those who inherit tend to underestimate it. Rome was handed over as an inheritance, but not as a gift. As an impossible responsibility, wrapped in a beautiful, almost naive speech, "You will rule together." A short sentence, elegant, and completely disconnected from human reality. It sounds civilized, it sounds modern, it sounds balanced, beautiful on paper, unworkable in reality. Because paper ignores emotions, reality does not. Rome was not a family business, it was not a collaborative project, it was a machine of constant pressure. A system that only worked with clear command, rigid hierarchy, and well-distributed fear. The empire demanded fast decisions, exemplary punishments, and unquestionable authority. Any sign of hesitation was read as weakness, and weakness in Rome was costly. Sharing power there was like sharing a steering wheel in a Formula One race. No one drives, everyone fights, and the crash is inevitable. While one tries to turn left, the other pulls right. And the track does not forgive indecision. Caracalla and Geta were not born enemies. They grew up together, played together, were educated together. They shared tutors, teachings, expectations, and constant comparisons. And that was the problem. They did not need to imagine their rival. They had known him since childhood. They knew too much about each other. They knew the weaknesses, the insecurities, the moments of doubt, the fears that never appear in official speeches. They knew who trembled before speaking, who hesitated when deciding, who needed approval. In the game of power, intimacy does not create trust. It creates advantage. Information becomes a weapon. Memory becomes ammunition. The central idea seemed simple. 2 emperors, 1 empire, guaranteed balance. But balance is not born from symmetry. It is born from the acceptance of limits. And neither of them accepted limits. In practice, it was a Cold War dressed in ceremony, public smiles, private emotional daggers. Every decision became a silent dispute. Every decree was read as provocation. Every applause in the Senate felt like an indirect attack. Even approval became a threat. Even the other's success was interpreted as personal loss. Because governing is not just about deciding, it is about being recognized as the one who decides. And recognition cannot be shared, it is imposed. Shared authority is diluted authority, and diluted power breeds paranoia. Caracalla believed in force, in imposed authority, in fear as a legitimate tool of government. To him, respect came from intimidation. He was a leader who confused fear with loyalty, and silence with consensus. Geta believed in the appearance of stability, in conciliatory discourse, in politics as continuous performance, where everything seems under control, even when it is not. He believed that appearing balanced was more important than being decisive, that avoiding conflict was a sign of intelligence. One wanted to be feared, the other accepted. Neither understood that Rome demanded something more brutal: clarity. Rome does not respect leaders who ask for permission, but it also does not forgive insecure leaders. Hesitation creates space, and space, in environments of power, is an invitation to attack. The Imperial palace became divided territory, separate entrances, different guards, advisors who did not mix, duplicated meetings for the same issues, a constant duplication of structures, of versions, of truths. Not even their mother could bring them into the same room without tension. Not even the figure meant to represent unity could sustain the illusion. Maternal mediation became emotional first aid, never a real solution. They reached the absurd point of dividing the empire on a map, as if the problem were geographic, as if lines on paper could resolve internal disputes, as if ego respected borders. But the conflict was never at the borders, it was in the ego. Public discourse of unity, private practice of sabotage, a constant performance for the people, a silent war behind the scenes, each one surrounded by voices repeating the same message in different words. If you don't act first, he will. And those voices never sleep. They feed insecurities. They turn suspicions into certainties. Fear became the official advisor, and advisors driven by fear never suggest peace. They suggest survival. Survival becomes the priority. And when survival becomes the priority, any moral limit becomes a detail. The breaking point did not happen before the people. It did not happen in the Senate. It did not happen on a battlefield. It happened in the most symbolic place possible, their mother's house, the space of care, of neutrality, of trust. Caracalla proposed a final conversation, reconciliation, peace, an end to the silent war. The proposal seemed sensible, almost necessary. Geta believed it, and believing in that context was a fatal mistake. And it was there, in the space that should have been neutral, protected, almost sacred, that Caracalla ordered him killed, without a speech, without a trial, without an explanation. The violence did not come as an emotional outburst, it came as a strategic decision. History records that Geta died in his mother's arms, and that detail matters. It matters because it reveals the final stage of degradation, when not even the last human bond works as a break. Because it shows that when power becomes the absolute priority, even the final emotional limits do not survive. Not blood, not family, not what should be untouchable. If this sounds extreme, look at the present with less comfort. How many partnerships end the same way? Not with knives, but with exclusions, calculated betrayals, carefully edited official versions. How many stories begin with, "It was for the good of the project," or "It was necessary," or "There was no alternative"? If you like using history to understand the present, subscribe. Here we don't idolize characters, we question ideas, because idolization prevents analysis, and analysis is what makes people uncomfortable. After the assassination, Caracalla did something extremely modern. He controlled the narrative. Controlling what is said is as important as controlling what is done. Geta became a traitor. The murdered brother became a threat. The victim became the villain. The moral inversion was fast and effective. Images destroyed, names erased, followers persecuted. Any mention of the brother was treated as a crime. It was not enough to kill the body. The memory had to be killed as well. An imperial scale cancellation. No hashtags, no timelines. But the same effect. Erasing someone from official history, Caracalla finally ruled alone, but ruling alone has a high cost. Absolute power demands constant vigilance, and constant vigilance breeds paranoia. To maintain power, he had to buy loyalty. He increased soldiers' pay, created new taxes, spread fear as public policy. Purchased loyalty is never stable. It lasts only until a better offer appears. The empire remained standing, but the stability was artificial, a stability maintained by force, not by conviction. And regimes built on fear never sleep peacefully, because those who rule by fear know they will be judged by the same. Fear charges interest. Caracalla ended up assassinated by his own men, not in battle, not as a martyr, but as someone who became inconvenient. When the cost outweighs the benefit, the leader becomes disposable, alone, without a brother, without a legacy. The power that eliminated the rival could not protect him. Because the mistake did not die with him. It only changed eras, it changed clothes, it changed language, it changed scenery. We still believe power can be shared without conflict, that ambition fits inside polite speeches, that the problem is always the other, that good intentions are enough, that maturity is enough. History insists on showing the opposite. It does not punish those who make mistakes. It punishes those who believe they will never be held accountable.